Okay, we're going to start the next debate now if everyone's ready. And if they're not, then be ready. So, you're both Emily's, so just for future reference, I'll be using your initial. I'll be Emily D, Emily M. Hope that's okay. So we'll start with a short introduction each. Since there's two of you, still basic introductions to your name, what year you're in, what course you're studying, your pronouns if you think those are relevant, etc., etc. And then we'll move on to the main round, where I will ask you a question, and you will have 1 minute to answer, and then up to 2 challenges. There's only 2 of you, so basically the other person can ask up to 2 questions. I may ask a question, but in total you'll have 2 questions, and you'll have 30 seconds to answer each question. After this, it'll just keep repeating like that, and then we'll end with closing statements from each of you, and then that'll be that. So we'll start with those introductions then, so you've got microphones in front of you, just use the one closest to you. So we'll start on this side.
Hello, my name is Emily Dunn. I am second year physics with Astrophysics, and I'm campaigning to be your next SU sports officer. Sports has been a huge part of my university experience. I've represented Bath at 3 Bucks events and multiple other national events. I'm so excited to have the opportunity to make some meaningful change and have a real impact at university.
Hi, I'm also Emily McManus, and to make it more confusing, I also study physics and astrophysics, but I'm in my 3rd year, so yeah, a lot of confusion there. I'm your current sport exec chair, and I've been the sport exec committee for the past 2 years, and yeah, it's a bit intro about me.
Brilliant, so we'll move on to the first question, which is, how would you support the development of a wide range of sports clubs while ensuring fairness in funding, facilities and access? So we'll start with Emily.
So to ensure fair access for all sports, I'd start by highlighting the low-level sports. For example, I had someone from Muay Thai reach out to me, so they felt that their sport didn't receive as much funding and as much coverage as it should. So to even the playing field, I'd definitely start by increasing the coverage on those low-level sports and increasing the funding and increasing the equipment time and pitch time for the lower-level sports.
Do you want to challenge that?
I think for me, when it comes to funding, is you want to say you want to increase the funding, but how do you increase the funding when funding's obviously a limited aspect? It's not infinite as much as we wish it would be.
I think that's a really good point, that funding doesn't come from nowhere. When I say increase funding, maybe I should have said reallocate funding instead of just increase funding. Perhaps move some funding from the top sports that already have the Team Bath funding as well, and move it down so that it filters down onto the low-level sports.
Any further challenges on that? Okay, if you'd like to answer the question.
Do you mind just repeating the question?
So, how would you support the development of a wide range of sports clubs while ensuring fairness in funding, facilities and access?
I personally think this is a hard one because each year clubs apply for their budget, and you're not going to please everyone. It's that simple. Not everyone's going to be happy, and it's making sure that balance of getting as many people happy as possible. And perhaps you can't give someone funding they want. Look at ways for them to apply for funding for the alumni fund as well. And also in terms of coverage, if they can't get the funding, let's get them all social media coverage. Let's give them other ways of growing and developing as a club just beyond the funding.
Emily, do you have any challenges on that? Any questions? Yeah, okay. So let's move on to the next question here then. So much of this role involves one-to-one support with club committees. How are you going to prioritise your time while making sure clubs feel supported and listened to? Let's start with Emily and
Yeah, so an important aspect of this role is supporting the clubs we have here at Bath. There's 56 of them, so there's a lot. There's a lot of clubs with very diverse needs. And if looking at managing your time, making sure you set time aside from your admin time to look at clubs. One way I wanted to do this was to have an environment where clubs can come and speak to me, set out maybe once a month. You know, just come, approach any questions. And whilst I may not be able to sort them there, I can take them away and then come back to them with an appropriate solution or ask for more information. It's a hard challenge, but working one-to-one with our clubs is really where we get to know one better, help them develop.
Emily, do you want to challenge that? Okay, then do you want to answer the question?
So there's a lot of time that I have, but there's also a lot of stuff that I would have to achieve. So to make sure that the clubs are listened to, I'd really prioritise online communication. So my email inbox would be the main point of contact, I think, for clubs, because that's a really accessible way. Clubs can send an email when they can. It doesn't just have to be on campus 9 to 5. And then when I would be able to, I would answer those emails and then set up maybe a one-to-one meeting or an online call. So the email would be the first point of contact to make sure that clubs can reach out in a time that's suitable for them to make sure that they can get their points across.
Do you have any questions on that one?
I think one of the main challenges, obviously, we hear from inboxes is the amount of sheer volume that comes into them. How would you filter through this? Because you've got 56 clubs, all using their club emails, perhaps getting one email a week from the club. That's a lot of emails from the clubs, as well as all other aspects of SU Sport running.
I think the key word there is filter. I'd be able to filter club emails via who sent them, so I could filter emails by one sent directly to me from the committee email, but the downside of that would be that clubs would have to reach out using the committee email. If they were personal emails, they may get lost, so that would be something I'd highlight to clubs when reaching out. They'd have to use a committee email so that I would then be able to filter out and find the emails to reply to.
Brilliant. Any further challenges?
You said you'd filter out to just club emails, but how do you ensure those not on committee still get their voice heard? They're still welcome to have their emails being sent to you. How would you propose dealing with that and not leaving them forgotten and left behind?
Yeah, definitely. Every voice deserves to be heard, even if they're not on committee. I'd encourage them to reach out through committee to make sure that the email does get registered as it's under the committee email. Every voice is important, but I'd encourage club members to reach out to their committee to lend me.
Okay, so we'll move on to the next question here then. So, when representing students in discussions around scholarships, recruitment and alumni funding, how would you ensure that these opportunities remain inclusive and accessible? So we'll start with Emily D.
So if I'm understanding the question right, it's how to make alumni funding and those grants accessible to all students.
Yeah.
So again, exposure I think is the key element here. Students have got to be able to access that information on multiple platforms, in multiple forms. So posters up around, emails again, the SU website. We just have to make sure that the opportunities are available to be discovered in multiple different formats. So yeah, online, in person, perhaps we come into committee, perhaps we come to training sessions and discuss these grants with the students directly at the training sessions. So we just have to have a variety of information sources.
And Leanne, would you like to challenge this?
So obviously one of the big things, as Emily's already mentioned, is the promotion, and it's really hammering home to that because there's a lot out there students don't know about at the moment. So working on the social media, both with the SU Bath Sports Instagram and the wider SU Bath Instagram, and working with the marketing teams to really get that message out there. Sorry, Joe. Yeah, and then also targeting the underrepresented groups. There's going to be groups which typically don't access this funding. Although some clubs may know about it and use it regularly, it's best to target groups that don't, to be like, hey, little nudge, you can use this, it may help you out. But also then fighting the university to keep this funding. We understand that higher education isn't something that's stable at the moment, so it's really pushing the uni to keep this funding where there will be case studies of how it's benefited students who've already used it.
And to both of you then, how do you suggest promoting this information, making it available? How best do you think this would be done? So website, QR code posters, what do you think would be the best way to make this available?
Yeah, I'm happy to go first. I think all the things you just listed are really good ways. I think a lot of promotion is done right because I do see a lot of information through my emails. Perhaps this is a discussion that possibly has to be done with Team Bath, but maybe more in-person advertising in the STV. I'm not entirely sure what the guidelines are, but we want to advertise this to students who play sports, and those students will probably be at some point in the STV. So that's probably one area that we haven't really maybe explored as much as we could in terms of promotion. But again, we'd have to talk to Team Bath just to figure out the guidelines and what advertising is.
Yeah, and then,
Yeah, I think Emily's right. We use different ways of promotion. The more challenge, the better. Quite simply using the Instagrams, they've already got quite a large following and engagement. But also the SU website, making it more clear and accessible, where the information can be found and not under loads of tabs, hard to navigate to. Perhaps in the features, you see if you first log on. But also making use of the club emails. There's a mailing list that exists for all sport members. Let's use that and get the message sent to all sport members, not just the committees. It's one email line. But still being aware not to bombard them with too much information and stuff also gets lost in that manner.
thank you. Okay. So, how would you work with the university and external bodies such as BUCS to improve the student sport experience at Bath? So, starting with Emily this time.
I think one of the big ones for me on my manifesto is when we work with external bodies. We know BUCS already stream many of their big major events that Bath go to. Why don't we show them here for the students still at Bath who can't attend? Let's create atmosphere around that. But also working with BUCS to make sure our student voices are represented in their discussions about student voice. Sorry, could you repeat the last bit of the question?
How would you work with the university and external bodies to improve the student sport experience at Bath?
Yes, obviously having quite an open conversation with them, where are the challenges, where are the positives, and feeding student voice through that. There's no point developing and trying to grow student sport if it's not going in the right directions for the students.
Challenge anything there? Or do you want to give a go at answering the question then?
I think Emily's point, I've obviously read her manifesto, and her point about streaming BUCS games, I think that's a really clever initiative. I think more things like that to get students that perhaps aren't competing in a BUCS event, but are supporting friends in the BUCS event, initiatives that get those people involved. So perhaps maybe transport to BUCS games. I know the athletes themselves perhaps already have transport, but maybe we increase the MPV number to 5 to take 7 spectators to a hockey game in Sheffield, get people on site, and then again the Instagram has to be our main way of promoting these BUCS sports. So I know the previous performance sport officer, Sam, he did a BUCS Athlete of the Month, and that just promoted the BUCS sport at Bath and made more people aware of what the state of the BUCS sports is.
Do you have a challenge to that?
I think whilst obviously BUCS sport is important, we also have to look at the wider student body. And a lot of student body here in Bath don't actually represented by BUCS sport, rather the recreational offering that many of our clubs do. How would you go about developing this and promoting the work we do to the university and then developing this programme further?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the question was, how would I work with BUCS, the organisation? But I agree that the student body is more than just the BUCS athletes. Maybe increasing coverage of the lower level fixtures. One of the pledges on my manifesto is to increase the lower level fixtures. So perhaps promoting those on the Instagram, getting people along to watch those. That's how to engage the wider student body, not just the BUCS athletes.
Any further challenges on that? Okay. What steps would you take to strengthen student engagement in sport, both for competitive athletes and students who participate more casually? So, Emily, do you think that's that?
Yeah, so the third pledge on my manifesto is to develop the social exercise clubs that already exist. So I know Girls Who Gym is an exercise club at the university, and they do a really good job of engaging students who perhaps don't want to play a team sport, don't want to play a competitive sport, they just want to lift and they want to exercise. So they're doing a really good job. I'd look to build on that and perhaps offer walking clubs, run clubs that you don't have to be part of a specific sport. So yeah, just clubs that you can exercise and building on the existing clubs that already exist to engage in the wider student body.
Would you like to respond to that?
I think my response is also kind of the answer to the question, so I'll just go ahead with that, that's okay. I think it's very key we strengthen student engagement in sport across the whole university, especially at the recreational level, because this is the entry point to sport. So part of my manifesto is I want to look at expanding the Bath Active offer, which is the recreational offer of sport here in Bath, which anyone can turn up to. They post a schedule every week on the SU Bath Instagram, and then it's turn up, no commitment, come and do your sport. And it's by expanding that by encouraging more clubs to engage in the programme, as well as improving the social media coverage of this, because we can't grow engagement in something that the awareness isn't already available for. So if we promote the engagement through the social media, we can show, hey, people are going, people are engaging, but they can't engage without awareness of what's going on. And it's also looking at that engagement in underrepresented groups such as our postgrads and international students here at Bath. And we can do that by looking.
I'm going to have to stop you there.
Okay.
Do you have a response to that? Okay, so both of you talk about making sport more accessible, recreational sport. In university, a lot of sport is about either going competitively or you're expected to already know how to do this sport. A lot of people come to university without knowing how to do certain sports, such as football, such as rugby. How do you aim to make learning new sports more accessible for students who don't want to compete, just want to do it recreationally, but there isn't something recreational yet? Yeah, you can answer this.
So again, the third pledge on my manifesto is to introduce these social exercise clubs that either include skills that most people can do. So walking clubs is something that I'm really keen to get going. Running clubs, which again may be a little bit more inaccessible, but those walking clubs are there. I completely understand that a lot of students haven't tried certain sports when they come to university, and so the recreational offering, I know for netball, I've done a bit of rec netball, there's no instruction for netball, there's no novice netball, as it were. But I know that there are clubs that are doing a really good job with teaching people how to do stuff. For example, the rowing club, the novice captains are doing a really good job taking complete beginners through the sport and developing that. So more exposure on the clubs that are doing a good job at novice sports, and then increasing exposure for the clubs that are doing a good job at novice sports, so that students know that they're there.
Would you like to answer or respond?
I'll just answer this again. So obviously making sport more accessible to everyone is key and really important for the wider sporting community here at Bath. And there's multiple examples of Wales' has worked already, particularly the Bath Active Scheme. I know women's rugby ran a Bath Active Scheme and managed to grow their competitive second side from this scheme. Girls and women who come to university never even considering playing rugby before, knowing how to play it. And that's one of the great examples, and we can look at how we encourage more sports to start that transition pipeline of, hey, I've never done this sport before, let me learn it, and then maybe one day I can live on a Bucks team. But also working with our diversity and support groups here at Bath, such as DAG and the LGBTQ plus group, and how their members can better engage in sport by removing some barriers they may face.
Do you want to challenge that? Any questions? Alright, so moving on from that point about, DEI, making sure that people from different backgrounds, queer people, etc., are represented in sport, how do you aim to make sport accessible to all properly? So you both talk about postgrads, you both talk about international students. How about those with disabilities? How about those who are neurodiverse? How about people who are queer? Etc. How do you make sure that everyone has a place to do sports, to try new things, and make sure that they know what's available for them? And we'll start with Leanne.
I think there's multiple ways to do this. I think, for me, if I was your sport officer, I wouldn't be doing it the way I think is best to do this. It's going out and speaking to the groups that are represented by those, whether they're LGBTQ, whether they've got physical disabilities, and speaking to them and the challenges they face. Because I'm not going to know. I'm having a rough idea, but the best people to speak to are people who will be facing those challenges. One thing I have thought of myself would be to introduce sensory or quiet hours to the FTV pool and gym. The FTV pool is free to all students for SwimFit, so already quite accessible. It's just getting that knowledge out there. If we were to implement and successfully lobby Team Bath to include this as part of their offering, and that's just making sport more accessible without commitment, really. And then you could build on from that by speaking to the diversity of sport groups.
Emily D, would you like to challenge that or answer? Okay, sure.
I think Emily's right. I don't think we'd have a prepared answer for that right now because it's a quite nuanced topic. I think, again, we'd have to reach out to those students that do experience those things and to make sure that we're actually actioning what they want. It's a really nuanced topic, and it's a sport by sport basis as well. It's not going to work for every sport. So I'd have to reach out to the sports and to the students to see if we can come up with a solution.
Do you have any response to that? Okay, to both of you then, you've talked about accessibility in all of these ways. What about in terms of money? We know that being a sport at university is really expensive. We've got to buy club membership, we've got to buy gym membership, etc. There's a lot of monetary barriers behind doing sport. How do you plan to ease this on students as, cost of living crisis, of course, currently happening, and money is difficult for everyone? How do you remove that from the equation with sports? And, Emily, let's start.
I think the way to get around this is to highlight what free sport there is. I feel there is a lot of offering available, so as Emily said, the swim fit session's completely free. All you have to do is just book online. As Emily said before, the Bath Active, it's all free, you can just turn up. I think we really have to highlight the free sports that already exist, because I think budget is it's a really nuanced topic, and I'm not really sure how extreme of a measure we can do in terms of budget, but I do know that there are free sport opportunities out there. They exist. We just need to make sure people know about them.
Yes, obviously accessibility in terms of money is a challenge right now because of the cost of living crisis, and it's probably a challenge we expect to continue for many coming years. I expect many future sport officer candidates will probably face this question. One of the ways to do this is, of course, that the Bath Active programme and programs like that do exist to participate in sport at a low cost. But also, if people do enjoy that competitive offer, looking at stuff like the Alumni Access Fund so they can participate in sport. Equally as perhaps counterparts from more one-off backgrounds.
Do you want to respond to that? So both of you come from a pretty unique background of being a woman in sport. How do you think this is going to help you make sure that voices are heard and make sure that you do your job well?
Yeah, so I've been playing sport for the majority of my life, and it's a really interesting question about women and men in sport. I know that in my first year at university, there was a little bit of inequality in my club where the men perhaps got more funding, the men perhaps got more coaching. I went to a women in science, I think, meeting, and I brought up that these challenges weren't just happening in science, they were also happening in sport. That change was then actioned, and going into my second and third year, I've noticed the inequality in my club has completely disappeared. I also feel that as a woman in sport, I'm sort of breaking barriers. We went to Weehall with the rowing club and we set the course record, which is something that a Bath crew has never done before. So it's about not just stopping at where previous people have been, it's about pushing past where those people have gone. And my many years in sport has taught me that just because a man can do it doesn't mean you can't do it.
I personally it's quite hard to challenge something on women having space in sport, so I'm just going to answer the question myself. It just doesn't feel appropriate at all. It's about creating a community. Having a woman as a sport officer, as the leader, is great, and it's sure that echoes down, and that all women and all students, in fact, have a space in sport, regardless of their gender identity. When we see these inequalities, it's about challenging them. I know for myself, I was the only woman who competed at Buck Surf. We've only ever had one each year, and that's incredibly daunting for me, but I went, well, women who this year graduate, I want to do it. And it's really about pushing those boundaries where you can and encouraging people to break through them, not just cross them, just keep pushing.
Okay, how would you measure whether your work as sport officer is actually delivering meaningful improvement for sports clubs and student athletes? So, Emily, if you'd like to start.
I think meaningful impact is quite a hard thing to measure quantifiably. We can look at the impact truly has on the student body. We will be student officers, one of us, and our job is about representing student bodies. If the student body is positively impacted, I would say that's a meaningful impact. It's about really pushing and making some change. We might not be able to complete everything on our manifestos in a year, but it's laying the groundwork for whatever comes next to continue that work and make sure it's not just left behind.
But how would you actually measure that progress?
I think it'd have to be in terms of student, through surveys, look at students before and after, like, going to rate their experiences. It's quite a hard thing to measure, but also from the atmosphere around, and there's an improvement.
Okay. Emily, do you have any challenges, or would you like to keep going?
As Emily said, it is a really hard thing to measure. It's not really quantifiable. But having spoken to the previous sports officer, I know that they said they could see physically the difference that they've made. So I just might have to just look. And at the Bath rugby event, I know that a lot of people were having a really good time. It just looked like they were having a really good time. So I think the way to measure the impact is just by looking at the students and whether they're engaging and whether they're having a good time and whether they're going to come back. I think that's a really important thing, is are they going to do the event again? But as Emily said, she's right, it's a really hard thing to measure. It's a tricky question.
Okay, brilliant. So, is there anything about the state of sports in the university at the moment that makes you genuinely angry, or something that you're very passionate about, that you think that you would like to change, and why do you think you're the right person for the job? Emily Ann, would you like to kick it off?
Obviously, there's a lot I'd like to change, and that's just having whilst understanding the workings of sport a bit more the past 2 years, still having quite an outsider perspective. I think the main one of students' minds is, of course, SULIS. It's something we're not going to be able to hide from much as campaign week. And even though at the moment we look at short-term impacts, it's really pushing the university for a long-term solution, because these short-term impacts aren't going to work forever. And I think having the experience and obviously knowing the SU sport team quite well, I've been on sport exec committee the past 2 years. I already have the relationships with them and a lot of the students in the student body of sport, and getting their voice here, that connection's already there.
Emily, do you have any challenges to that, any questions? All right, do you want to give it a go?
Yeah, so something that I'm quite passionate about, and a lot of my housemates, friends are passionate about, is SULIS. I know that there's sort of a couple of directions that development can go in, and I think it's really important that we choose, like Emily said, the right direction for the university, a long-term solution. I know that the rowing club perhaps has a little bit of direction that they want it to go in, and I'm sure that would benefit a lot of the people in the rowing club. I do have a lot of, I'm in touch with a lot of the sporting community. I've been in hockey, netball, rowing, tennis, women's rugby, I know a couple. So I've had a lot of input from those people, and I think it's about understanding what they are also passionate about. Not just me, not just my interests, listening to the other students as well and what they want to change.
Do you have any challenges?
Not really, I just wanted to add on that it's not just what we want to change, it is what the student body really wants to change.
Brilliant. Going back to the accessibility of sports, making sure that everyone feels welcome, there are a lot of trans, non-binary and gender non-conforming students on campus, many of whom may want to do sport. How do you make sure that there's a space for them to do this, either competitively or non-competitively? How do you feel about mixed gender sports? How do you make sure that there's a space for this?
Yeah, obviously quite difficult in Ragdale. We still have that guidance from that Supreme Court ruling, and it's do as much as we can before that comes through, still make them feel welcome. whether that be offering more mixed sport opportunities, because then there's no question of gender identity and really pushing there, and supporting students, getting them the right information. So saying, hey, you'll do this sport, here's the website of the governing body, here's where to look.
Emily?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
So, about transgender, non-binary and gender non-conforming students, how do you facilitate space for them to do sports, whether that be competitively, non-competitively, in mixed gender teams, etc.?
Yeah, again, it's a really nuanced topic. I know that specifically in the mixed netball, there's been the inclusion of a mixed netball team, and that means that you don't have to then disclose you don't have to disclose that information. You can just turn up and play. No one is checking, and we can get around that perhaps unfortunate Supreme Court ruling. We can just avoid any issues. Anyone is welcome to play. I know in rowing, there's mixed boats. We put out novice mixed boats. Again, you don't have to disclose anything. You can just go out and row, and we also compete in those mixed boats. I know rec hockey as well on a Sunday. They play. Anyone can turn up. Again, just mixed. So I think those opportunities are the way that we're going to make sure there's a safe space for someone who can just turn up, and it doesn't matter how you disclose.
Do you want to?
Yeah, I think, yes, it's great, so those opportunities already exist, but how would you make them more visible and aware to the wider student body? Many athletes who may not fit the gender norms, the transgender or gender non-conforming, may not exactly look at sport as their first option to build a community here involved. How do you get this information to them so they know sport actually might be a place for them?
I think that's a really good point, and that's perhaps some of these students don't look towards sports. Perhaps there is maybe a slightly laddie culture, as one of the students said to me earlier, around sports. It would be about changing the perception of sports, again, through exposure, again, through the Instagram, showing that these different sessions, anyone can just turn up. It's not going to be a laddie culture. It's not going to be get very competitive, again, the Instagram.
So, you've mentioned this laddie culture. How do you aim to combat what is often a toxic culture in sport? There's a lot of competitiveness in sport already, just by the nature of it being sports. But how do you plan to combat toxicity and make things a safe place to be? So we'll start with Rudy.
Yeah. So it's really important that we don't encourage any of this, like you said, behaviour, especially as former sport officer on the sports exec committee. I know that at the start of the year we talked about hazing and how that was completely not part of our values at the university. I know there's a couple of initiation showstops that sometimes happen. They had to submit event planners to make sure that that was all above board and nothing untoward was going on. So I think just really pushing those rules to make sure that people are sticking to them, and we don't let this culture creep in and overtake the good work that's happening.
I think one of the main things of tackling this sort of culture is relying on the programmes and promoting the already exist. Bath has an initiative called Never Okay, and that's like a zero tolerance to any sort of discrimination, sexual harassment. It covers so many different aspects of unwelcoming and unwanted behaviour, and it's really promoting that through our sport clubs and ensuring that if it does happen, it gets stopped out through the appropriate channels.
Do you think that these kind of things are being appropriately dealt with? This goes to both of you. Emily.
I know that as I'm on the sports exec committee, I know that we did get those event planners in, and then I did witness a couple of those socials go ahead, and they all were above board. They all stuck to the event planner. Nothing new was happening. So from my limited experience, it does seem to be working. But I do know that in sports that perhaps I don't have an input in, perhaps rugby, perhaps the men's hockey, there could be more stuff going on which we're not aware of. But again, it's just pushing those event planners, pushing the rules to make sure that everyone's sticking to them.
Yeah.
We're quite lucky to have quite a good sporting culture here at Bath, though it isn't without its issues. There's still instances where we obviously don't want here in sport, and it's really about pushing students that they can actually report anonymously through members of staff through the Never Okay form, and really saying that it is acceptable. It's not taxating. It might be minor to you, but the next person it could get worse. And it's pushing that through and showing that there is really no tolerance to it.
Brilliant. So, have you read your competitions manifesto? And if so, what's something that you might take from the manifesto and try to implement? We'll start with Emily.
I think it's quite hard. When I read your manifesto, a lot of the ideas you have actually overlap with mine. So I really like the social exercise pledge you had, but I think I didn't understand it when I read the manifesto. I was like, okay, it's a brilliant idea, but how do you see that being implemented? And now you've chatted about it with the sport-related societies like Girls Who Gym. Whilst they're not a part of sport, it's really implementing the culture and the ability they're creating and promoting they're out there.
Emily D.
I think Emily's initiative to get sensory hours at the SCB gym and pool really impressed me. I remember reading that and gone, oh, I wish I'd thought of that, because that's such a wonderful idea to get people involved and people coming when they know that it's going to be a low stress environment. So I thought that was a really wonderful idea. If elected, I would love to perhaps work with Emily to get that implemented.
Any chances in that? So previously, sports societies have worked with other activity societies in the past. Fencing have worked with student theatre, for example. Do you think those kind of connections are important to maintain? How do you see those kind of connections being implemented? And do you think we'll start with Emily D.
Of course, I think cross-society interaction is really important. If just to get students talking to students that perhaps aren't in their bubble, just to enrich their experience at the university, I'm going to assume that relationship, fencing and musical theatre was part of a production, and that would enhance the experience for everyone, because perhaps those fencing students got an opportunity to perform on stage, and then musical theatre got perhaps real fencers in their production. So I think the symbiotic nature of that relationship seems to prove that it's a good thing. So maybe encouraging those relationships, working closer with the activities officer, and making sure that perhaps more of those relationships can be created.
Brilliant. Emily.
Yeah, what I want to highlight is this already happens at a low scale level within Bath. I know recently Bath Dodgeball and one of the sports you held a World Cup, and they invited those different sports and societies to kind of give dodgeball a go and compete against each other in an environment that was, while still competitive, more friendly and approachable. And it's really about building upon that and getting more sports involved. It's happened once, we know it's possible. Let's use this example and be like, hey, you could run something similar, and really helping clubs to spearhead those initiatives, because the social and emotional health benefits sport really brings to those who participate.
Building off of this with connections with other societies, how do you think you could build a better connection with student media? How do you think you can use student media to further sports?
So obviously I interacted with student media. They filmed my Minute Manifesto and they did my radio interview. I actually had to do it twice because it didn't work the first time, so I got to see them again. And all of them were so lovely and so keen to help, and it's wonderful that all of them are volunteers, so you guys are giving up your time. So I think really making the most of your enthusiasm would be really good. I've really enjoyed, standing in front of a camera or, going, being interviewed. So I think perhaps getting maybe committee members. I know that the chair of rowing would love to get in front of a mic and give his opinion. So perhaps introducing these opportunities for committee members slightly lower down in the student body compared to the student officers would be a really great way to make most of your guys' enthusiasm and talent.
Yeah, I think the interaction with sport with student media is, whilst it works, it's great, it can be quite underutilised by most of our clubs. And it's really sitting down and looking at student media and what they can offer our clubs exactly. What's the expectations? What's the time frame if you want them to be involved? We're all students at the end of the day, except the officers. Our committees are run by students, student media is students. There's obviously some challenges with that, but one of the great things I think, again, URB down to commentate some of the games. Everyone loves a commentator, and everyone loves one who knows about the sport. So let's get URB down there, perhaps along with the committee members, and really get something going and build that game day atmosphere.
What's one thing about sport right now that you feel is working really well? What do you want to keep going throughout your time as student, union officer, sports officer? Anne?
I think one of our greatest assets here at Bath in Sport is our student leaders. Our committee members do immense work. I don't know how some of them do it, if I'm being honest with you, alongside their degrees, in running their club, running these events, engaging massive clubs, sometimes up to like 500 members, running socials every week. Badminton, for example, have courts booked pretty much every day. Every time I walk for the STD, badminton, they're doing badminton. And it's really, these student leaders are an asset to us.
Emily?
I think Emily gave a great answer there. The student leaders really make up the heart of what sports are able to do. I think the Sports Exec Committee has been doing a really good job this year. Obviously, I am part of that, and so is Emily. But I think we've really been able to get some really good projects done. I know Charlie has got the Bath Mile done, which was really good for getting people engaged, especially during exam season. I've been working on my audit of sports, which gives a base knowledge of how all the sports work and what benefits they enjoy. I know Emily's been doing really good work with her second-hand kit project, and every time she brings it up in committee meeting, again, it's just really impressive what she's managed to do alongside her degree, alongside her chair of Phys Soc as well. So I think again, like Emily said, the student leaders and then the Sports Exec Committee doing a really good job this year.
So a lot of sports facilities are on campus. How do you aim to make sports accessible across the city and not just centrally on campus for those who might not be on campus, for example? Emily, do you like to start?
I think we'd have to make the most of the facilities that already exist in the city. I really don't see us being able to build any more facilities. One really good utilisation of city sports spaces is the Bath rugby game. I think that's a highlight for a lot of students, even if they don't actually play sport. So events like that could really increase sport visibility, increase engagement, and just give a really good experience to students. So making the most of sports facilities that already exist through events like the Bath rugby match.
Yeah, I think it's really important to remember that not all of our clubs actually train here at Bath on campus. Many clubs, Rowan's one of them, sailing, windsurf, flying, all do their training off campus primarily. Every week they'll go arrange transport to somewhere and do their training, and it's supporting them in how they get to their training. What are they doing now? Do they feel that's the most optimum solution? And then working with the challenges around that, so whether that be offering and promoting more the minibus training, the MPV training to our committee members, or looking at solutions and working with them, such as Sulis is off campus, even though it's campus facilities. Perhaps we could lobby Team Bath to push the slot times closer to the U4 bus timetable as that actually runs past Sulis. We can't change the buses, but I'm sure we can a bit more swing with Team Bath.
Brilliant. Either of you want to challenge either point? So going off of this, there are a lot of sports that need facilities that aren't on campus. There might be climbing. As of yet, I don't think there is figure skating or ice hockey, but potentially skiing, things like this. People might want to do all sorts of sports that don't have facilities on campus. How do you make sure that this is facilitated? What if people need transport to these places? What can you do to help that? We'll start with Emily D.
I think a couple of the societies that you mentioned do a really good job. So, for example, skiing, while they might not be able to train or go skiing during the year, I know they organise their ski trip, which is a real highlight for a lot of students. So that's just maybe organising one big sports event instead of across the year to make sure that people can get there. I know that surf as well, they do their surf trip, which again, you may not be able to go surfing every weekend, but if there's a trip available, then you can still enjoy that sport, even if it's just perhaps once a year.
Emily M.
Yes, I think it's good to really emphasise that some sports have these big trips once a year, but a lot of clubs, such as snow sports, do get around the UK to drive snow to indoor skiing, whether they hire transport such as buses and sell their bus tickets, or they make use of students who perhaps might have cars involved and then expense the mileage back. It's about making clubs aware that they have a transport budget within their allocated budget and how they best utilise that to get the best experience for the students in their clubs.
Either of you want to challenge? So one more question, and then I'll let you guys make some closing statements here. So Bath is a good university for sports. We have a lot of achievements. How do we make sure that we are all proud of those achievements? How do we increase pride in those achievements across the university, not just within people who might play sports, within people who might know those people who've achieved things? How do we make sure that those achievements are public and we're aware of them and we're proud of them? Emily,
Yes, here at Bath we have some great achievements in sports. I know a lot of about 6 of our sports have just come back from Bucks Nationals up in Sheffield, and we had some amazing results up there, whether students hitting personal bests or winning us Bucks medals away. And it's really about promoting them on our social media, on our platforms. We don't always know what's going on, so it's great that we encourage clubs to tag us in their achievements. It's quite hard to keep track of all 56 sports at times. So it's really encouraging clubs getting something great happening in our club. Let us know, we can share it, we can celebrate your achievements.
Emily?
I think we also have to recognise these achievements in a more formal way. So obviously sharing on the Instagram is great, but the Blues Awards are a really good way to recognise those achievements. I sit on the Blues committee this year, so I'll be looking over the award nominations and making sure that the criteria is available so that people know whether they've actually reached a Blues Award. So that sort of thing is really important, making sure people who are eligible for these awards know that they're eligible and can nominate themselves.
Any questions? Okay. So I'm going to give you guys some time to just have a closing statement each to a minute. Summarise your manifesto, summarise your main points. So we'll start with Emily.
Thank you all for coming today. I've really enjoyed being able to discuss my manifesto and my pledges. I hope I've done enough to get your vote. Look out for my slogan, let's get it done. And good luck to all the other candidates. The last 10 minutes I saw of the last debate was really interesting, and I hope this one has been just as interesting.
Yes, I just want to say first thank you to student media for giving us opportunity to discuss our manifestos, as well as Emily for being a great candidate. It might get confusing to voters at times, but we'll work it out. My manifesto is built around the idea of sport supporting everyone through recreational engagement, equality, diversity and inclusion, and well as giving our clubs the tools to thrive. Student engagement and voice at the heart of my manifesto, and if you choose to vote for me and it's successful, I will ensure that continues to be at the heart of my year. Thank you.
Thank you. Everyone, round of applause.